Hi, good morning. You're listening to iAntique with Bruce, and I'm Bruce Limecooler. Last week, we were talking about Black Americana, collectibles for all ages. Today, we'll be talking about 1, 2, 3 o'clock rock around 50s collectibles. We come to you every Saturday from 6 to 7 a.m. We're brought to you by the Brass Armadillo and iAntique.com. It's your home for social networking for antiques and collectibles. Coming up at the store this month, it's Harvest Month at the Brass Armadillo, and we'll be celebrating all during the month of October. Every Sunday, we're going to be serving up treats and doing drawings for prizes in celebration of Football Sundays. At the end of the month, on Halloween, we'll be doing safe trick-or-treating and offering up a one-day 15% off sale. Today's topic, 1, 2, 3 o'clock rock around 50s collectibles. And I have my guest today with me, Miss Carolyn Carmichael. Carolyn, you've been on the show with me before, and I have really enjoyed your ability to talk about so many different topics. Good morning.
Hello, it's nice to see you this morning.
Well, I know you're going to actually get the chance to come back and do another show with me next week. We're going to talk about that just briefly here in a bit. But I'd like to get into our topic, 1, 2, 3 o'clock rock around 50s collectibles. And that's because it's such a broad category with so many different intricacies that made it and still make it so popular. Would you agree?
Oh, yes. The mid-century of the 20th century was just wonderful for collectibles.
Well, how long have you been collecting all types of things from the 50s, Carolyn?
Well, since I grew up in the 50s, I kind of thought they were yucky. But now that I'm older, I look back and I find them endearing because that's what I grew up with. And now they're fun to collect.
They are a lot of fun. Well, the 50s came at a time when the people of the United States wanted lots of things. I mean, why do you think that was so true?
Well, I think the war years of World War II were a time when you didn't have a lot. You had ration coupons to buy cheese, milk, butter, and bread. And so buying extra things just was not possible. And you were saving everything you could save for the war effort. Nylon hose, buttons, anything that was left over was for the war effort, including aluminum.
Yeah, even the ration books, even food, a lot of food products were held back in reserves to support the men at war.
Right.
Well, you know, war where lots of people, when they came back from war, there was a whole different change in the economy. I mean, the United States wanted more things. They wanted innovation. There were more people willing to work. The economy was thriving, and this brought about all types of inventive ideas. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and the other thing is that women went to work during the war. Guys left for overseas, and somebody had to be in those manufacturing plants. And for the first time, the majority of women got to taste what it was like to go someplace every day besides the home. They had to find places for their children to be because they were gone, and they earned a paycheck and had their own money for the first time, some of them in their lives.
Exactly. And when the husbands came home, they not only knew they wanted their homes to be better, they had a taste of a different lifestyle, and they wanted things, and their husbands were now back home and earning an income. And I think that really went a long way to revitalizing the economy after the war.
I agree.
Well, there are all different types of 50s collectibles out there, and they help to share a great history. You know, you have another name for them, and you shared it briefly a minute ago. What do you call them?
I call them mid-century or baby boomer, possibly.
I like that. I even like the one you said, 20th century collectibles, because, you know, it denoted that they were coming into a new age.
That's right.
Well, cool. Well, you said your mother was a real influence for you for your collecting of the 20th century collectibles. What did she do to make that so important?
Well, my mother was born in 1920. So by 1940, she became a housewife after she got married. And she lived through all the rationing. But when the 50s came about and she had me, we moved into a very small two-bedroom house. I am surprised at how small the 50s homes and the 40s homes, their kitchens were tiny. You may only had 4 or 5 cupboards and then your refrigerator or icebox, whatever, and your stove and your sink. So they were small, and you had to make do with less room.
Yeah, and a lot of people didn't have all of the things that came about during the 50s that they had, you know, to help them out in their homes.
Right. There were no microwaves. There were maybe a toaster. That was pretty cool, and an electric percolator. Everything else was done on the stove or in the old-fashioned oven.
Well, if you're just now joining us, we're talking about 1, 2, 3 o'clock Rock Around 50's Collectibles. You're listening to iAntique with Bruce, and we're brought to you by the Brass Armadillo and iAntique.com. And if you'd like to become a dealer at the Brass Armadillo, just mention that you heard it here on the show, and I'll give you a special rental incentive. But I want to get back into all these different things, the way things, what kind of things there were. Let's go that way. You know, when you think of the 50s, some of the items that came about to make ladies' lives easier, are very collectible today. What are some of those items?
Okay, well, as we talked about the kitchen, it was the heart of the home, even in the 50s and 60s. And one of the most wonderful things that came about was an item called Bakelite. It actually was found or developed by a Belgian-born chemist named Leo Baekeland in the early part of the century. This process combined phenol, Phenol, and formaldehyde, if you can believe that. Ew. And they heated this substance and molded it into the most wonderful shapes. And some of those shapes were actually made into handles or bottle tops or full-blown pieces of dishware.
Wow. So could you tell us how the Bakelite helped to make life so much easier?
Well, Bakelite was so light. Some of the pieces were light enough that it floated. So you didn't have to carry heavy metal trays. You could have a Bakelite tray that was very, very easy to carry things around on. And it prevented breakage because you could drop it and you wouldn't have a problem like with a china dish.
Oh, I can see that. You know, Bakelite was one of many types of plastics that were starting to evolve in the technology. I mean, they had one, I believe, called Catalin, and it all derived from celluloid, which was even earlier,
Right.
And they just made it better, right?
The celluloid was from the 20s, and the one problem with it is it's highly flammable. You got a match near it, it'd go poof.
Ooh. And then the Catalin was, I think, in the next one, and the Catalin was made into a lot of different things, but it didn't have the durability of Bakelite.
No, Bakelite, because they added other ingredients to that formula, the phenol and formaldehyde, was very, very solid. And when they would heat it and put it into molds, then it became exactly what you molded it into.
So it was very functional. They
very
were able
functional.
to make it into many different things. So Bakelite made other items in the 50s that maybe weren't even used in the home, that are collectible today. What kind of items might that be?
Well, if we talk about men, one of the things that they used Bakelite for was the little tiny handles on fishing reels. And sometimes you'll see an old fishing reel from the 40s and 50s, and the handles are green or brown or a creamy color. If you look really carefully, it's usually the leftover stuff that was just after a finished product. They had a little bit, so they made handles. They made buttons out of Bakelite. Some of them were beautifully carved into animal shapes or diamonds or different things that you put on a dress. They also made the casings for portable radios and clocks.
I'll be dogged. I know that Bakelite was made into something that I actually find, or I should say my wife really finds interesting, is jewelry that was made out of much of the Bakelite.
Yes. Jewelry when it was made out of metal, can be heavy. And the women of the late 40s and early 50s wanted something that was fun. And Bakelite jewelry was the bracelets were the big, thick, chunky bracelets that kind of have come back in this day and age. Of course, they're not Bakelite, but these had swirls of color in them. Sometimes they had carvings of flowers. The other thing was necklaces with all kinds of fruit. If you ever see a movie with Miss Carmen Miranda where she dances and has the fruit on her head,
oh yeah,
the bananas and all that stuff. Well, they actually copied some jewelry off of her headdress and made it into earrings that dangled way down and necklaces for around the person's neck that when you had a low dress on.
Oh, wow, that's really amazing. Well, you're listening to iAntique with Bruce, and our show today is 1, 2, 3 o'clock Rock Around 50's Collectibles. We're brought to you by the Brass Armadillo and iAntique.com. That's iAntique.com. You can also follow us on Facebook at Kansas City Brass Armadillo. Don't forget, October is Harvest Month. Coming up at the store, we're going to be doing special events every Sunday in celebration of Football Sunday. So come on over, enjoy a treat, or maybe win a prize. And at the end of the month, we're doing safe trick-or-treating on Halloween and a one-day 15% off sale. Next week's show will be controversial collectibles. They're taboo, so why so hot? We're going to dig into just what you can do to find the best of the controversy in the collectibles. But when we come back, we will be talking more with Carolyn about 1, 2, 3 o'clock Rock Around 50's Collectibles.
KCMO Talk Radio, where Kansas City connects with the Dave Ramsey Show.
Don't wake up the day after Christmas with this horrible headache that feels like a financial hangover, where you go, what have I done? It'll be May before we pay off these presents. Make a list and check it twice, because you're not in Congress. You have to live on less than you make.
Dave Ramsey, weekdays 9 to 11 a.m. on KCMO Talk Radio 710, now FM at 103.7. Your radio is set to talk. KCMO Talk Radio 710, now on FM at 103.7.
Attention antique shoppers, if you're looking for the ultimate antique adventure, you will find it at the Brass Armadillo Antique Mall, just off I-70, between exits 21 and 24 in Grain Valley. We are the perfect place to stroll aisle after aisle of fine antiques and collectibles. Whether it's our fine antiques, vintage, or retro items, we have them all. Antiques are what we know at the Brass Armadillo. With hundreds of antique dealers and millions of items, it is a shopper's paradise. So come on out to the Brass Armadillo Antique Mall, just off I-70 between exits 21 and 24 in Grain Valley. We're open 9 to 9 every day. Come see what everybody's talking about.
That's the word. We got everybody talking. Antiques are all we know. We got everybody talking. Everybody's talking about the Brass Armadillo. Brass Armadillo. Everybody's talking.
One of the things I love about our friends over at Window World is their exceptional value. Dave Ramsey here. Folks, if you're in the market for windows or doors, you need to call Window World of Kansas City. In just over 10 years in business, Window World has improved the look and efficiency of over 28,000 homes in Kansas City. Window World is the home of the original $189 window. And these $189 windows are amazing. They come with double-strength glass, a lifetime warranty, and the Good Housekeeping seal of approval. Plus, Window World is committed to serving my listeners well. So give Window World a call today for a free in-home estimate. 816-799-0820. That's 816-799-0820 or windowworld.com. Window World, simply the best for less. Be sure and tell them Dave Ramsey sent you.
This is Mark Comfort, owner of Cruise Holidays and Comfort Tours, inviting you to our 22nd annual Vacation Extravaganza Seminar and Sale. It will be Saturday, October 25th from 9 till 3. This is the single best day. You can learn all about the wonderful vacation options that are out there and save money. We will have 5 different ocean cruise line representatives. We'll have 3 different river cruise line representatives, and we will have 6 different all-inclusive land-based representatives, including Funjet and Globus Vacations. All of the major vacation vendors in the entire world will be here that day, Saturday, October 25th, and you can learn by going to the seminars or talking to them one-on-one. Rarely do you get an opportunity to talk to these vacation vendors that represent ocean cruise lines, river cruise lines, all-inclusive land-based vacations. So RSVP today to 816-505-1500. That's 505-1500. Or check out the seminar times. That's cruiseholidays.kc.com, and I'll see you there.
Attention antique shoppers, if you're looking for the ultimate antique adventure, you will find it at the Brass Armadillo Antique Mall, just off I-70, between exits 21 and 24 in Grain Valley. We are the perfect place to stroll aisle after aisle of fine antiques and collectibles. Whether it's our fine antiques, vintage, or retro items, we have them all. Antiques are what we know at the Brass Armadillo. With hundreds of antique dealers and millions of items, it is a shopper's paradise. So come on out to the Brass Armadillo Antique Mall, just off I-70 between exits 21 and 24 in Grain Valley. We're open 9 to 9 every day. Come see what everybody's talking about.
That's the word. We got everybody talking. Antiques are all we know. We got everybody talking. Everybody's talking
Your radio is set to talk. KCMO Talk Radio 710. Now on FM at 103.7.
1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, rock. We're going to rock.
Hi, welcome back. You're listening to iAntique with Bruce, and I'm your host, Bruce Limecooler. We come to you every Saturday from 6 to 7 a.m. on KCMO Talk Radio 710 and on FM 103.7. Our show today is 1, 2, 3 o'clock, Rock Around 50's Collectibles, and we're sponsored by the Brass Armadillo and iAntique.com. And if you have any questions, comments, or photos that you'd like to share, go to iAntique and click on the Ask Bruce button. Coming up next week, we'll be doing a whole show about controversial collectibles. They're taboo, so why are they so hot? When we left off, we were talking to Carolyn about the 1, 2, 3 o'clock Rock Around 50's Collectibles. And Carolyn, we didn't get to finish the Bakelite because I understand you have some other interesting things to share with me, but it's a very unique plastic. What are some of the other things made from Bakelite?
Well, phonograph records were once pressed from Bakelite. They were kind of thick, and not like the vinyl of the later 50s and 60s, but it was one of the first things that could actually be molded very easily. There were also napkin rings. I've actually seen napkin rings in the shape of Scotty dogs, which I think are very, very cute, very collectible, and kind of pricey. And the last thing I would like to mention about what is made out of Bakelite is there's actually a Bakelite museum in Somerset, England. And in that museum, the largest piece is a Bakelite coffin.
Oh, cool. How cool would that be? A full-size coffin.
Full-size coffin.
Well, yeah, that kind of, I was wondering, what sort of things were specifically for the men in that context. And that would definitely be a collectible that men would enjoy. I mean, but that's very interesting. And Bakelite was such a profound move forward in plastics. The vibrant colors they were able to come up with for the jewelry, the ability to make it into virtually any shape where they didn't really have all that technology before, all came about after the war. Am I correct?
That's correct. And that didn't have to be handmade. Using a mold, you could just pour the substance in there, and once it dried, you had the shape. It didn't have to be carved or any meticulous stuff done to it, so that way it made it a little more affordable to everyone.
I can totally see that. To actually be able to come out with the image of a dog or something like that was not there before they started testing and working with the Bakelite. But if it is so different, so many people search out the Bakelite. How can you really tell if a piece is made out of Bakelite or not some other plastic?
Well, there are reproduction pieces that people termed Fakelite, which I think is kind of a funny name for it. They just put fake in front of the Lite. But there are two testing methods when you're out in the field. The first one is called the 409 test, and we've all heard of the 409 spray. It's a cleaner, household cleaner, and you just take a little cotton swab and put some cleaner on it and touch a small area of the piece. I would recommend on the underside or inside where it can't be seen. And if the piece is very much Bakelite, it will show up in a yellow stain on the cotton swab. And then you want to wipe that off right away so it doesn't affect the integrity of the piece. But if it turns out a little bit yellow, then you'll know that it's real Bakelite. And the second method, which I have used, is by dipping a piece of jewelry like a bracelet in some hot water and then removing it quickly and taking your thumb and moving it across the piece and actually sniffing it with your nose, and it smells like camphor, and then you will know. And camphor's got a very distinct odor. You will know that it's Bakelite.
Well, why do you think it was so easily tested in this way, in these types of ways?
I think because of the ingredients that it's made with. When you're talking about phenol and formaldehyde, both of those, again, have a very strong pungent odor. And so I don't know why 409. I think somebody just kept testing different things, and the 409 was the magic that made it show up with the stain, so they knew it was Bakelite.
Well, if you're just now joining us, we're talking about 1, 2, 3 o'clock Rock Around 50's Collectibles, and you're listening to iAntique with Bruce, and we're brought to you by Brass Armadillo and iAntique.com. Don't forget, if you want to become a dealer at the Brass Armadillo, come on over and see me, and I'll make sure you get a special rental incentive if you just tell us you heard it here on the show. Carolyn, I agree with you in your context on Bakelite. I know we actually, I've heard this silver polish. You can put silver polish on it and rub it, and it'll have a yellow cast. But I've always been told it's because of all the extra petroleum, along with the other chemicals, that they had to put in Bakelite. It was a double-edged sword. Didn't it also make the Bakelite a little more brittle and not as long-lasting?
Yes, and it didn't do well probably under pressure. Like if you stepped on a piece of your jewelry, it cracked pretty easily.
I can totally see that. But our next kitchenware item that we're going to discuss, during the 50s, there were all types of items that were made, many for the kitchen. The home was changing, and therefore people needed their products to evolve. Can you tell us about some of the other plastics that were made after Bakelite that became so popular?
Yes. Another group of plastics, again, I want to go back to the fact that kitchens were small and families were growing because this was the baby boomer time. Ladies were having babies, and so the family was no longer just 2 or 3 people. There may be 4 or 5 kids. Well, with small kitchens, you had to figure out a way to condense your stuff so that everything fit in your cabinets. And one of the main things that came out was a lightweight plastic called Melmac. And Melmac was a chemical reaction that was come up in the lab in the space age. In 1960, the first man went up in orbit, and from some of that research came this wonderful stuff that we refer to as a generic plastic.
I'll be dogged. And along with the Melmac, they made it into all different kinds of shapes and sizes and
right. And in the kitchen, the best thing was the mixing bowl set. No woman could be without a mixing bowl set. And the big ones were 3 sizes. They were graduated, and they were nesting bowls. One fit inside the other. And that was very important because instead of having to put 3 bowls somewhere, these all fit, and you just needed one space for all 3 or 4 bowls, whatever you had.
And they also brought into the kitchen a lot of bright colors and appearance, correct?
Oh, yes. There was turquoise and pink and gold and bright green, and that was very important. I think the drab colors of World War II were kind of over with now, and so everybody wanted to brighten things up.
I believe that. Well, as things upgraded and became more efficient, what do you think that did for America and for the time frame, the 50s market?
Well, I think it did a lot for the time frame. Women were always looking for a way to shortcut or make their life easier. Again, if they were still working, as they had during the war, they didn't have the extra time to make dinners and stuff, so they could prepare ahead, and with these wonderful pieces of plastic, they could store things in a refrigerator, and it worked very well for the family.
Well, that's really cool. So if I had to ask you to sum it up a little bit about some of the kitchen collectibles or just collectibles of the 50s in general, why do you think the 50s themselves were so collectible?
I think it's because people my age, which I won't tell you what it is, but people my age like to come back and collect those things that were near and dear to us. And because bright colors, again, are really in fashion, even my daughter-in-law has looked at some of my stuff and said, "Oh, I love that color." Well, that's because I have a really bright orange Texas ware bowl that I use to mix potato salad and cake batter and lots of things in because they're lightweight, they're convenient, and they're the right size. For some reason, the size of those bowls are just perfect.
Yeah, and people from the 50s had it, as we see it today, a much simpler lifestyle.
Right.
And I think that's, something that's always going to be endearing and draw people into the 50s. And, we're going to talk about some more things here in just a minute. But you're listening to iAntique with Bruce, and we're brought to you by the Brass Armadillo and iAntique.com. Coming up this month at the store, October's Harvest Month, and the Brass Armadillo will be celebrating all during the month of October. We have all types of fall decor with a vintage flavor for your home. Every Sunday, we'll be serving up treats and doing drawings for prizes in celebration of Football Sundays. And at the end of the month, we'll be hosting a Halloween extravaganza where we'll be doing safe trick-or-treating and offering up 15% off of everything in the store. After the break, we're going to be doing more about 1, 2, 3 o'clock Rock Around 50s collectibles. Remember, it doesn't make any difference what you collect or what aspect of the antique business you're in. You're going to learn something here today and every Saturday. We'd love to invite you to stop by our store located just off of I-70 between exits 21 and 24. I would really like to see you there. We'd like to make you a part of our family.
Are you starting your day with a KCMO Morning Show and Greg Knapp?
Let me tell you some of the things I'm for. I'm for peace on the plaza. I'm for a zoo you can go to without getting shot at. There's a lot of things I'm for, Mayor Sly James. What I'm not for is you trying to tell me the only way Kansas City can be a big-time city is if we're forced to put in a streetcar that we don't want.
Greg Knapp, mornings 5 till 9 on KCMO Talk Radio 710 and 103.7 FM.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. Some airline staff are grounded after the president of Frontier Airlines says a nurse who was on their flights and later tested positive for Ebola may have been at a more advanced stage of illness than first thought.
The airline says it has now thoroughly cleaned and sanitized the plane she was on. The airline has contacted about 800 passengers who flew on that plane, although health officials agree there's probably no risk to them.
Fox's Leland Vittert. That nurse Amber Vinson being treated in Atlanta. In the battle over voter identification, the Supreme Court is allowing Texas to use its controversial new law for the November election, which requires voters to produce certain forms of photo ID in order to cast ballots. That law was struck down by a federal judge last week who called it...
The law is an unconstitutional burden on the right to vote. The Justice Department has also condemned it as a way of suppressing minority turnout.
Fox Radio's Lisa Brady. Fox News. We report, you decide.
The KCMO forecast from KCTV5.
Our forecast as we head through the night, mainly clear skies, chilly temperatures dropping back to near 40 by sunrise. Saturday afternoon, mostly sunny, a lot less wind, and a cool day with a high in the low 60s. And then a little warmer on Sunday under partly sunny skies, while the high is 67. I'm KCTV5 Chief Meteorologist Chris Suchan.
KCMO is Talk Radio 710 and now 103.7 FM. Something's happening. Know what that is? You will with KCMO.
Attention antique shoppers, if you're looking for the ultimate antique adventure, you will find it at the Brass Armadillo Antique Mall, just off I-70 between exits 21 and 24 in Grain Valley. We are the perfect place to stroll aisle after aisle of fine antiques and collectibles. Whether it's our fine antiques, vintage, or retro items, we have them all. Antiques are what we know at the Brass Armadillo. With hundreds of antique dealers and millions of items, it is a shopper's paradise. So come on out to the Brass Armadillo Antique Mall, just off I-70 between exits 21 and 24 in Grain Valley. We're open 9 to 9 every day. Come see what everybody's talking about.
That's the word. We got everybody talking. Antiques are all we know. We got everybody talking. Everybody's talking about the Brass Armadillo. Brass Armadillo. Everybody's talking.
Hey, this is Greg Knapp, and fall brings a lot of falling leaves, and a lot of them get in your gutter. How would you like to remove gutter cleaning from your chore list forever? Just call up my guys at Leaf Guard. See, at Leaf Guard, they have the one-piece gutter system. The gutter and the cover all in one piece. Other gutter solutions use covers or screens. They pop into your existing old gutter. Sometimes they even make the clogging problem worse. But Leaf Guard comes with a lifetime, transferable, no-clog warranty. If anything ever goes wrong, they come out with their ladders, climb up and check it out for you. You can get 60% off labor and a $100 gas card with a whole home gutter system. They even have special financing with no payments and no interest for 12 months. It's available for qualified buyers. Don't risk life and limb to clean your gutters. Get Leaf Guarded and you never have to do that chore again. Get a free gutter analysis and find out if Leaf Guard is right for your home. 913-204-0001. 913-204-0001. It's 913-204-0001 for Leaf Guard. Hey, this is Greg Knapp, and fall brings a lot of falling leaves, and a lot of them get in your gutter. How would you like to remove gutter cleaning from your chore list forever? Just call up my guys at Leaf Guard. See, at Leaf Guard, they have the one-piece gutter system. The gutter and the cover all in one piece. Other gutter solutions use covers or screens. They pop into your existing old gutter. Sometimes they even make the clogging problem worse. But Leaf Guard comes with a lifetime, transferable, no-clog warranty. If anything ever goes wrong, they come out with their ladders, climb up and check it out for you. You can get 60% off labor and a $100 gas card with a whole home gutter system. They even have special financing with no payments and no interest for 12 months. It's available for qualified buyers. Don't risk life and limb to clean your gutters. Get Leaf Guarded and you never have to do that chore again. Get a free gutter analysis and find out if Leaf Guard is right for your home. 913-204-0001. 913-204-0001. It's 913-204-0001 for Leaf Guard.
KCMO Talk Radio 710 and now on FM at 103.7. The information you count on. Fox News 24/7 on KCMO.
Welcome back. You're listening to iAntique with Bruce. And the title of our show today, 1, 2, 3 o'clock Rock Around 50s Collectibles. Next week, we're going to be doing a whole show on controversial collectibles. They're taboo, so why are they so hot? When we come to you every Saturday from 6 to 7 a.m. on KCMO Talk Radio 710 and on FM 103.7. And we're brought to you by the Brass Armadillo and our sister networking site of iAntique.com. But, Carolyn, we're still in the kitchen now, and during the break you explained to me about some of the colors and everything. I want to get down into why was color so important, but what are some of the different aspects of kitchenware?
Okay. It's not just bowls. There were sets of dishes. Sometimes the true Melmac or Melmeline dishes were actually a white dish, a plate, and then maybe it had leaves on it or a spatter like a starburst. And then the bowls and the plates and the cups were all one color. Say it's a turquoise or a dark brown or a vivid green. And that's how the tables were set. And I remember going one time to buy something for a wedding with my mother, and we went to Woolworth's. And that's what we bought, was a place setting for 4 of Melmac. And I just couldn't believe that anybody would just want plastic dishes because we were still eating pretty much on glass plates. But that was the big deal in the late 50s, was to have lightware that would actually go into a dishwasher if you were lucky enough to have one.
Yeah, and all the bright colors they were able to bring in, the durability in a family with children probably made a big difference to them, didn't it?
Yes, and they could coordinate with the lovely linens of the 50s and 60s, too, that also had those bright colors, so your table looked very put together.
Well, I would concur with that, and I want to ask you a question that you mentioned something to me about one of the collectibles we're going to talk about. Tupperware. Seriously? That's a collectible?
I know, that's really weird, but Tupperware, yes, is collectible. A phenomenon of the 1950s was the home party. I don't know how many home parties my mother would be invited to, and she always felt like she needed to go because it was one of her close friends, and she would be having somebody over. And ladies would actually make businesses out of this, and they would sell food or cookware or jewelry. But Tupperware was a big thing, to have a Tupperware party in your home.
Well, I guess I can see that. I guess I can see that the early Tupperware would be collectible because of why?
Early Tupperware is collectible, again, because it's lightweight and because it also stacked and because it was the first true storage unit that you had that came with the bottom and the lid.
Yeah, I can see that. And I also, I know that when I was little, and we won't tell my age either, but when I was little, my parents had a set of Tupperware bowls or Tupperware cups, and I had one color that I liked the best. And they don't make that in this day and age in the Tupperware industry, but it is very sought after, I think, just based on the color and the warm and fuzzy feeling, as I quite often say, why people collect, because they remember it.
Yes, and what's really fun is the oldest Tupperware, if you have lucky enough to have one of the oldest or first made lids, at the very bottom under the word Tupperware was a sea lion's head. And he had his head reared back, and he was making that sea lion noise they make. And underneath his head it said Tupper Seal, which meant it was an airtight seal. And what you did was you pressed the seal all the way down to the one corner, and then you pulled a little corner back, and you could hear air whoosh out. That was called the burping of the seal. And when you put it back down, that made the airtight container. And for women in the 50s and early 60s, this was a big thing because aluminum foil didn't keep things airtight. Even the plastic wrap that you had to fight with because it always wadded up into a bowl before you got it over your container, this was perfect.
Well, now that you've talked to me about Tupperware being collectible, I think back of all the different kinds of things people come in to look for. And even though they've remade them later, different companies have remade them, but the corncob holders, the old ones, they want those.
Yes.
They want the orange peelers. They want those. And I guess those were all just free gifts at the time.
Yes. When you went to a Tupperware party, your hostess was required to have some kind of refreshment. And then the lady that was selling would come up and she'd play games like bingo, Tupperware bingo, or some of these crazy little things that they adapted. And then if you won, you would get one of the little handouts like a pair of tongs or a little thing that pulled the top off of your strawberries.
That's very funny. But if you're just now joining us, we're talking about 1, 2, 3 o'clock Rock Around 50s Collectibles. You're listening to iAntique with Bruce. And we would like to invite you to check us out at Kansas City Facebook or at iAntique.com. And if you'd like to become a dealer, just mention you heard it here on the show, and I'll give you a special rental incentive. Well, I want to kind of steer away from the kitchen now a little bit more, and let's go into some of the other 50s things. Do you think 50s collectibles are more driven by men or women, or is it just the time frame that drives the collectible market?
Well, I think certain things attract women and certain things attract men. But again, I reiterate that it is part of pulling back into our lives what we had as children. But I think some of the kids that are my son's age in the 30s, and they're in their 30s and their 40s now, look back and see those colors and see the fun shapes and say, gee, this would fit nice in my own home. I have a friend whose son has turquoise, tin, metal canisters in his house because he just likes the color. He thinks they're wonderful.
So we're getting back into the warm and fuzzy, the
right.
reason they remember it. So I would tend to agree. It's the time frame that drives it. And there were so many products that were created during the 50s. And we're going to braze past some of those because you and I talked about maybe doing a whole show on some of these topics in the future. But I'd like you to take a brief moment and tell us about some of the toys maybe that were from the 50s that were so popular.
Well, in the 50s, and what I know best is what I will talk about. I know a lot about dolls, and baby dolls in the 50s were wonderful. They were the first ones that drank and wet, which meant you got a bottle, you filled it with water, you put it in the little doll's mouth, which was usually shaped like an O, and then in a few minutes you had a wet diaper because there was a hole in her bottom. And if you can find those dolls in good shape now, they command a good price because that's the kind of dolls that I played with. And I thought that was so wonderful. It was like magic. She drank and wet. And they were advertised like there was a Betsy Wetsy doll and a Tiny Tears. Tiny Tears actually cried out of little holes beneath her lower lashes. So that was a fun thing for a little girl. And boys wanted the trucks, and the bigger the better. And Tonka was a big driver in this. I remember the little tiny cars, but then they came out with big steam shovels and dump trucks, and the little boys would play with those. And some of them were 12, 15 inches long and almost that high, and you could actually put rocks and dirt and sand in the back.
Yeah, I remember that very vividly, that I wanted those kinds of toys to play with because I could really get a pile of dirt going. Well, I think that's extremely unique and interesting. But remember, here is what we can do for you. If you love antiques and you love the look of antiques, we can put that together and have a start of a fun and exciting business. The Brass Armadillo can help with just that. We'll be able to take care of all your business details, and you only need to stop in and select your booth or showcase to get started. We make it very simple. You can start a business for less than $100 per month. When we return, we're going to hear some more about 1, 2, 3 o'clock Rock Around 50s Collectibles. You're listening to iAntique with Bruce. We're brought to you by the Brass Armadillo Antique Mall and our sister networking site of iAntique.com. And if you have any questions or comments, go to iAntique.com and click on the Ask Bruce button. I'll get back to you in due time. And the next week's topics is going to be a whole show on controversial collectibles. It's taboo. So why so hot?
KCMO, Kansas City's home of Michael Savage.
They've confused sexual liberation with far more important liberations. And that's a great, great scam in order to imprison an entire generation, which is to turn them all into sexually promiscuous beings and then tell them do whatever they want and let them think they're free, and then to hobble them with socialism.
The Savage Nation. Weekdays 2 till 5 on KCMO Talk Radio 710 and 103.7 FM.
Attention antique shoppers, if you're looking for the ultimate antique adventure, you will find it at the Brass Armadillo Antique Mall, just off I-70 between exits 21 and 24 in Grain Valley. We are the perfect place to stroll aisle after aisle of fine antiques and collectibles. Whether it's our fine antiques, vintage, or retro items, we have them all. Antiques are what we know at the Brass Armadillo. With hundreds of antique dealers and millions of items, it is a shopper's paradise. So come on out to the Brass Armadillo Antique Mall, just off I-70 between exits 21 and 24 in Grain Valley. We're open 9 to 9 every day. Come see what everybody's talking about.
That's the word. We got everybody talking. Antiques are all we know. We got everybody talking. Everybody's talking about the Brass Armadillo. Brass Armadillo. Everybody's talking.
If you've always wanted to create outdoor magic in your yard, get on the phone and on the schedule at Aspen Lawn and Landscape. Add a cozy fire pit or first-class outdoor kitchen, dramatic lighting, or an efficient new sprinkler system. Call Aspen. They'll make you happy, just like Corey.
I'm glad I have these guys. If I didn't have them, I don't know what I'd do. I have a lot of landscaping that needs to be done.
All you need is the desire and a call to Aspen to arrange a free consultation with Aspen's professional landscape designer. From ideas to design to installation, Aspen delivers beyond expectations. Isn't that right, Rosie?
Aspen does fabulous work. I mean, we do have the best looking yard in the neighborhood, and we enjoy that.
Get started this year. Add more next year. Nancy did.
We've been customers with Aspen for about 14 years. Very, very pleased.
Find out more at aspenlawn.com. Since 1985, the best choice for the best homes in Johnson County. Aspen Lawn and Landscape. Call today.
Did you know up to 1 in 5 Americans will get the flu this year? Because less than half of us get vaccinated? You didn't know? That's okay. We do. Rite Aid has certified immunizing pharmacists at the ready to discuss your risks, answer your questions, and shield you from what you don't know. So get your flu shot, no appointment necessary, at Rite Aid today. With us, it's personal. Flu vaccines available while supplies last. Age restrictions apply in some states. See pharmacist for details.
Do you have unfiled tax returns or owe the IRS or state more than $10,000? If you don't take action now, your tax problem is only going to get worse. Seizure of property, bank levies, wage garnishments, and potential criminal prosecution. Call the experts at U.S. Tax Shield for help at 1-800-334-5070. Our tax advisors will review your case for free, inform you of your rights, and give you a guaranteed quote. And we have an A-plus rating with the BBB, so get protected. Call U.S. Tax Shield now at 1-800-334-5070.
Attention antique shoppers, if you're looking for the ultimate antique adventure, you will find it at the Brass Armadillo Antique Mall, just off I-70 between exits 21 and 24 in Grain Valley. We are the perfect place to stroll aisle after aisle of fine antiques and collectibles. Whether it's our fine antiques, vintage, or retro items, we have them all. Antiques are what we know at the Brass Armadillo. With hundreds of antique dealers and millions of items, it is a shopper's paradise. So come on out to the Brass Armadillo Antique Mall, just off I-70 between exits 21 and 24 in Grain Valley. We're open 9 to 9 every day. Come see what everybody's talking about.
That's the word. We got everybody talking. Antiques are all we know. We got everybody talking. Everybody's talking about the Brass Armadillo. Brass Armadillo. Everybody's talking.
Greg Knapp. Coming up Monday on the show, good news for homeowners in Kansas and Missouri. And at 8:35, I'm bringing in an expert about the Fed continuing to pump money into the system. When will the bubble burst? It's on the KCMO Morning Show.
Welcome back. We're talking to Carolyn Carmichael about 1, 2, 3 o'clock Rock Around 50's Collectibles. Don't forget, you can send us your questions, comments, or photos at iAntique.com. Remember, we're the best place for the best value. That's Brass Armadillo, and located in Grain Valley. And we're open 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 days a week, 364 days a year. I've been the general manager of Brass Armadillo for over 16 years, and I'll tell you, I love my job more each and every day. We'd hope you'd come on by and see what you can find. But I want to talk to Carolyn more about 50's Collectibles because it's a huge discussion topic. we can go into any one of these topics and talk for quite a while, but let's go past some of them that you find interesting and I find interesting. Surely the fashion industry took a new turn during the 50s. What do you think? How do you think that helps to drive the market?
Well, fashion was very important in that, again, the war years, we had more drab colors, more straight skirts, suit-type things for women. But with the 50s came sundresses, and sundresses were a lot of fun because in the summertime they had big, big skirts, and they were on tops that the bodice of the dress usually a little bit of a dip at the neck, and then the spaghetti straps or wider strap sundresses so your arms showed. And then under those big, big gathered skirts, we had the most fun petticoats. One of the petticoats I had 6 layers, and every layer was a different pastel color. I thought I had died and gone to heaven when I got that petticoat.
And I don't think you can talk about 50s fashion without mentioning poodle skirts, leather jackets, and all the accessories, the accoutrement they went with the Hollywood vision of 50s.
Oh, yes, and the sweater sets. They've also come back in the last few years where you had a short-sleeve sweater and then a long-sleeve sweater with buttons up the front. And I remember that one time when I was about, 9 or 10, a friend of my mother's sent me these it looked like a piece of jewelry, but it actually had a clip on each side and then a chain in between, and that was to hold the sweater with the long sleeves over the sweater with the short sleeves. And there must be a name for that, but it escapes me now, Bruce.
Oh, that's really cool because that kind of leads me in to where we were talking about Hollywood, and Hollywood helped to drive the market for 50s collectibles today. I mean, it was a much simpler time, and they did so many movies. What do you have to say about that?
Well, we tried to be like our Hollywood stars. Like, if you were really into Marilyn Monroe, you wanted that dress she had on when she was over the steam grate because it was a beautiful fashion. And maybe you couldn't afford the several $100s it cost, but if you went to a local store, there was probably something similar. And so when we saw what was in even the homes of the Hollywood stars in a movie, you might want to emulate that like a piece of furniture or a lamp. It was just because now more and more people were becoming in touch with what was out there where they've been kind of sheltered in the years previous.
Yeah. And in today's time frame, they've made lots of movies endearing the 50s.
Oh,
For
yes.
example, Peggy Sue got married, got to go back in time and relive her life, her childhood life.
Yes, and I think one of the most fun movies is kind of unknown. It did have Meg Ryan in it. It was called IQ, and it's a movie where Meg is a very intelligent woman, and she falls in love with a gas station attendant who rides a motorcycle, and her uncle is Albert Einstein. And what's so funny about it is this gasoline attendant takes Einstein on a ride on a motorcycle. If you ever get the chance to watch the movie IQ, I recommend it. It's just a fun 50s throwback.
And it gives that new life into everything that they use for those time frames. All of the changes in everything from accessories to the home to just the type of clothes they wore. People want them again.
That's right.
Well, if you're just now joining us, we're talking about 1, 2, 3 o'clock Rock Around 50s Collectibles. You're listening to iAntique with Bruce, and we're brought to you by the Brass Armadillo and iAntique.com. Don't forget, if you'd like to be a dealer, come on by the store and say hi to me, and I'll give you a special rental incentive if you tell me you heard it here on the show. I don't think we could go anywhere past the 50s and how popular it is if we don't mention the music of the 50s. It's still very hot, whether it's the record albums or just the songs that you get snapping along with and singing to. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Oh, yes, I would. I happened across a couple of early Elvis albums. I didn't have in my booth 24 hours. They were just snatched up immediately. And then we had the doo-wop, which was like Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, those crooners, those tenors that left the 40s music and went into the more jivey type music that had that beat and you could dance to or do the twist.
Well, you know, we all remember the series Happy Days, and one of the big things, not only their song that they sang, was they centered around the jukebox. They centered around new automobiles. They centered around all the things that they could have that they didn't used to get to have before the 50s really took place.
That's right, and having a radio in the car was just the best, because you could actually turn on to that AM station and listen to all the most popular songs. And here in Kansas City, the old WHB actually had a 40-star survey. And every Friday night of my life growing up, we went to see which song was on top. And they actually gave you a printout of the top 40s here in the Kansas City area.
Yeah, I think another movie, American Graffiti, where they showed the whole idea about how the radio was so important to the children, to the young people of that time.
That's right, because it gave them a connection and they could sing it. And then they'd go to a dance and off came the shoes. They were called sock hops. And they would dance to Rock Around the Clock like we heard earlier on this show.
Well, you know, you mentioned that the cars didn't have radios. My parents' car didn't even have seatbelts in it. And a lot of people wouldn't even know that would have ever happened.
Right. And the first song that ever mentioned a seatbelt was Chuck Berry's. And that was back in the late 50s, early 60s. So, yeah.
Well, let's go to another topic. How about outdoor equipment? Did that change a lot during the 50s?
Oh, yes, because family camping became real exciting. And we did things like picnic baskets and really cool coolers. Coleman came up with coolers that were well insulated, and you could put the whole day's meal or 2 days' meal in with a block of ice, and off you go.
Yeah, on iAntique, we actually have a whole show just on outdoor equipment that you and I have actually done together. We might bring it and tweak it and bring it in here and do a radio show sometime.
Right. And again, there's a lot of things like in the picnic basket, there was, again, plasticware. That was really important because it didn't weigh anything when you were carrying that picnic basket from the car to the table.
And the old coolers in the 50s, they weighed enough by themselves.
That's right.
Well, you know, the 50s vibrant colors were also put into things like table accessories and linens, right?
Right. And we mentioned earlier that you could take your Melmac and match it with the tablecloth. That was a really fun idea that tablecloths took on what we did. There's some people that collect only tablecloths with states on them, like Missouri, wow, Kansas, New Mexico. And each state developed their own tablecloths that were like what they had in the state. And if it didn't have the outline of the actual state, sometimes it was just the things that were prevalent, like Indians or hat dances, sombreros, or to coordinate with the fiesta wear that was so popular.
Yeah, yeah. Well, do you think that 50s collectibles are driven more by young people or adults, or do you think it's just timeless?
I think it's timeless, and I think once you get a 50s collectible, no matter what it is, all of a sudden it's like, I want more of this, I need more of that, because I can coordinate it with the colors of today and kind of blend the old and the new.
Well, I tell you what, Carolyn, I really thank you for coming by today, but next week's show is going to be on controversial collectibles. They're taboo, so why are they so hot? You're listening to iAntique with Bruce, and we're sponsored by Brass Armadillo and iAntique.com. I'd really like to have you stop by the store located just off of I-70 between exits 21 and 24. I sure do hope to see you there, and if you're thinking about antiques as a business, the Brass Armadillo is the perfect outlet, and I, for one, would love to make you a part of our family. New dealers are like oxygen. They breathe life into the industry, and there's still plenty of treasures out there. Could you be the one that finds the next hot item? Go ahead, take a retro road trip to the Brass Armadillo Antique Mall and join us for a vintage adventure.